All right, so the purpose of today is to show you how simple mobility training can be, and also for you as an individual to kind of look at things and what can you take to obviously help with your own body, right? So it's one of the biggest things that people make mistakes with mobility training is overthinking it, and then potentially not putting the time and effort into it that's involved. And what I mean by that is consistency beats intensity with this sort of stuff. So what I find most key with most people is like picking 2 or 3 exercises and actually just being consistent with them. Most of the people who I coach and who have, made some dramatic changes, it's because they literally just did that. They picked, one of my best transformations is because they did one particular exercise 4 times a week for 6 months. And that's how simple it was. Because the reality is this, is if you can highlight things that your body's not doing, and then you can create an exercise that replicates you doing that movement, well, lo and behold, you get better at it. So for me, mobility is like a skill. So like if we picked a skill, I'll pick one that I'm used to, like handstands as an example, and I told you it's going to take you 12 months to hold a handstand. You're probably going to be a little bit more understanding of that. If I told you it might take you 6 months to touch your toes based on where you're currently at, a lot of people get a little bit down by that, and then they kind of say, oh, well, I've always been unflexible, so that's just not going to work for me. As opposed to like, okay, what do I got to do? And so what I want to try and show you today is, or at least how I teach it, is everything's on a continuum. And so if it's a visual goal that you're wanting to work towards, let's say a front split as an example, well then you as an individual look at where you are on that continuum, and then based on the exercises that I give you today, and not necessarily the choice of exercise, but the method behind it, then you as an individual can select different exercises and use that same kind of intent. Anybody kind of exposed themselves to some form of mobility training in the past? No? A little bit. Look, my job is not to take you away from what you're already doing, because that's the worst thing you can do to a client, because the best form of exercise is the one that you do regularly. Obviously, without injuring yourself, or at least trying to keep that to a minimal. So my job here is to try and give you accessory things, and that's the idea, is to give you stuff where you sit at a desk all day and okay, my neck's a bit tense, maybe I could just get up off the desk, do this for 15 minutes, get back onto the desk. So most of the stuff that I give to people who, let's say, don't want mobility training but need it, it's more around okay, like, can you give me 5 minutes a day, or can you give me 10 minutes a day? Okay, let's create some healthy little habits, and let's do that. So one of the biggest things that I do for most people is put a golf ball beside your toothbrush, because most people don't forget to brush their teeth. And even just every time you brush your teeth, put the golf ball on the floor, roll the feet out. It'll be super beneficial for people. Might sound so simplistic, but for a lot of people, that's why I put you all in your bare feet, because we're going to have a look at how your feet are. If you're always in shoes and you spend most of your day in shoes, they can get quite rigid, and that's already going to affect everything up the chain. Okay? Obviously, we're in a good country in the sense that we spend a lot of time in our bare feet because we can get onto the beach, but it's amazing when you go to colder climates or places where people wear a lot more shoes, you get to see how kind of the function is kind of lost in their feet, all right? What we'll do is I'll talk another little bit for a few minutes, and then we'll get into kind of like a workout style. And what I'll try to do is give you as much information as to why you're doing it, rather than just, here's a cool exercise, try this. A few caveats: there will be some exercises that feel a bit crampy. That's totally okay. A lot of the times you might feel like you have to kind of investigate the position. So the idea being is, if you've never done it before, you might notice that there's a bit of apprehension when you first try it. Or it might take you, let's say, for example, you're trying to do a global movement, you might have to break it down into parts because your body's trying to decipher what's actually happening. Okay? Does anybody have any questions before we kind of dive into it? Or any kind of queries? No? Anybody got any injuries that I need to know about? I'm not going to have you hanging from bars. I'm not going to have you doing burpees.
Recovering from a strain, but I'll just...
That's okay. Yeah. Okay. You make that executive decision.
Tailbone.
Say again?
My tailbone, it's sensitive. So.
Sensitive. Just when you sit on it, like, or, yeah.
I was saying, like, if I was to go back.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, so very simply, the first thing that I always do with our joints is warm them up. So this can be something that you could do in the morning as an example. If we start to break down the joints very simply, there's going to be one caveat, but every joint we should focus on rotation. And the one that I would caveat that is our spine, mainly because if your spine does not segment, it's going to struggle to rotate. So if we think of what the vertebrae should do, they should be able to segment individually. And for a lot of people, what you'll see, for example, you might see this nice rounding of a back, and then all of a sudden there's a hinge from the hip, and they might not be able to segment here. So if I'm someone who's then going to try to rotate, what's going to happen is it's going to potentially rotate from your weakest points. So again, if we can only prioritize a certain amount of time within the week, I would rather you focus on segmentation, because if you improve that, this is going to get better anyway, and you're going to have to do this in life, right? You have to rotate throughout the day. So with that being said, what we'll do first of all, I'll get you all to take your socks off, and then just get you to stand up. And the main reason I have you in your bare feet is because you will notice that we all have weird and wonderful ways of standing. Our shoes can mask a lot of things as well. That's not to say they're not important in some exercises, but I would say in most of this stuff, where possible, I would recommend you do it in your bare feet, okay? Now, all I want you to do for this, we're going to start with the hips. We're going to do a little bit of rotation, and the way we'll do this is ideally you'll have somewhere to balance. So we have nice pillars here, or the wall, mainly just so you hold onto the wall, right? The only reason is I don't want you to have to focus on your balance here, okay? It's not the point of the exercise. So all you're going to do is this. Just watch me for the first rep. Don't be that person. I'm going to bring the knee up as high as I can. Then I'm going to pull it out to the side. Notice that the rest of my body's not moving, okay? Then I'm going to internally rotate. So I'm rotating from the top of my leg. And as I rotate, it's like I'm trying to rotate as much as I can as I pull the knees towards each other. Then I just reverse what I did, okay? Oh, nice little click. Okay? All I want you to do here, stay nice and strict. Be okay with how shit it might be. So if it's like this, I would rather this than this. Yeah? So we're literally thinking of the top or the head of our femur sitting in our hip. I want you to do 5 repetitions. You reverse each rep and then swap over to the other side. Okay? Find the wall. There's loads of it. Don't overthink it. So what I usually say as a starting point is shitty reps are better than no reps. So you getting consistent at this, you will get better. So think of knee up first. You want to flex that knee up as high as you can first, then out to the side, then rotate around, and then reverse what you just done. 5 in total, then swap over to the other side. Slow and controlled wins the race here. Clicks are okay if there's no pain. Usually what I start to, I suppose I'll go through today, but what we want to try to do is the better we get at carrying out a movement globally, the less the clicks are. Usually what happens is if there's certain things that aren't doing what they need to do, other areas of the body have to do it for them. So especially in a rotational context, if you're so used to doing, let's say, squats, deadlifts, you get very comfortable in that linear pattern. You get very comfortable at telling your brain, like, I'm using the back of my legs, I'm using the front of my legs. But now when you do something like this, that it's a bit more global, there's a certain point where the other, like one muscle has to give way to the other one, right? So the better you move globally, obviously, especially in an F45 context, the better you're going to perform, right? Now what we're going to do is we're going to do shoulders. We'll do both arms together. Just watch for the first rep. I'm going to keep my ribs pulled in like this. I'm going to keep my palms out. This just encourages external rotation, but I will finish the rep in internal rotation, okay? So we start like this, we finish like this. Just watch, don't be that person. I'm going to come all the way up. When I can't go anymore, I have to rotate from my shoulders, okay? Notice that I didn't flare my ribs, I'm not arching my back. So all the movement is coming from my shoulders themselves. I do have tension in the arms as well, so I'm actively trying to like corkscrew my shoulders, okay? Reverse each rep and let's go for 5. So palms up on the way up, and then rotate from the shoulders as much as you can so your pinkies face forward at the bottom, and then reverse what you just done. And now you might notice a difference between left and right. That's perfectly normal, okay? What we want to try to do though is bring them as close to each other as we can, but you will always have a dominant side. So much concentration. This is probably the quietest a class has been in here, is it? So much concentration. Yeah, everyone's like, oh. It's all right. If you need to fart, the easiest way to get out of that is just ask for the music to go on.
And turn the AC back on.
Open all windows.
They don't open. So, Dave, you're telling us you got to fart.
No. Yes, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Like, can you just watch my?
Oh, watch your phone.
I've got
Yeah.
a really bad rotation in my shoulders. Because I do from there. So is this trying to move?
Yeah, think of watch what happens. So when I come up, I'm now going to rotate my shoulder as much as I can. Yeah, keep rotating your shoulder forward. Look, I'll do it manually. You okay from my hands? Right, so come up.
My weak point.
That's all right. So when you come up, now rotate from here. So rotate forward, like pull this forward, 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 forward. Yes, better.
And they can elevate a little bit.
Yeah, I don't mind that. Yeah, because we want to learn how to move the scaps anyway, right? Yeah, for sure. Okay, the next thing we're going to do, segmentation on our spine. Just watch. So I'm going to stand hip width apart. I'm going to tuck my butt. Okay, easiest way to think of PPT, I'll demonstrate in a second, but I am tucking my pelvis here, so my glutes are quite engaged, right? I'm going to maintain that position for as long as possible, but then there will be a certain point where I have to allow my hips to come out behind me, okay? I'll show you when that point happens. So when I come down, I'm rounding my back. So when I get to, that's as much stretch as is in my lower back. The rest is all from my hip. This is hip, 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 okay? And then I reverse. So there's a certain point, but I want you to keep that tucked so that we actually do get a bit of a stretch. Later on in the class, we're going to be adding weight to this movement. So take it nice and slow, take it nice and easy, but understand what's happening. It's not a stiff leg deadlift. There is a lot of flexion happening in the spine, and I want to see that.
Dave,
Okay?
do you want to explain what PPT is?
Yes, I'm going to do that right now.
Oh, cool.
So I want everybody to go into a bit of a half squat like this. There's one thing to say what it is, and then there's another thing to actually allow you to experience it. Anybody who's been told they don't use their glutes, this is a really good understanding to show you that you can engage your glutes. All you're going to do is watch this. So you're going to tuck your butt as much as you can. Think of like pulling your belly button up towards the ceiling. So it feels like you're holding a credit card in your butt cheeks. And then all I want you to stand up, but don't lose that position. All feel our glutes are tight. So that's a posterior tilt, okay? So whenever anybody says PPT, that's what they're talking about. So good tight glutes. It's one of the biggest mistakes a lot of people make. If you are sitting in an anteriorly tilted position and you try to squeeze your glutes, it's not as easy as when you do that. So if you do any hip thrusts, planking, anything like that, that's where I would recommend you really lock in that pelvis as best you can. Okay? Now we all know what a PPT is. PPT. Tuck your chin, and then it's a big rolling of your upper back. Try and keep that PPT for as long as possible. As soon as you need to let the hips go out, let the hips go out, go down as low as possible, and then reverse what you just done. Slow and control wins the race. Just allow the head to hang. Remember, your neck is part of your spine also, so flex that too. And this is one of those exercises where when you get to the second and third rep, you start to notice that it's becoming a bit more globally friendly. It's like more free flow. So for the first few reps, you might notice that you have to decipher it. You just go for 5 in total. When you've hit the 5th rep and you're at the bottom of that 5th rep, just kind of swing your arms from side to side, nice, slow, and controlled. Every time you breathe in, I want you to force that breath right into your lower back. Every time you breathe out, just see if you can get the hips higher and the chin lower towards the floor. If you need to soften the knees, but the challenge for everybody would be to work towards straight legs, where possible. Remember to tuck your chin. It's a big rounding of the back. If you are used to stiff leg deadlifts, this is going to mess with your head because you actually want your core, or at least you want your midsection to be quite relaxed here. Because if you are bracing your abs here, it's very hard to segment your spine. So if you're used to bracing, this is just different. Best word in the fitness industry is variation. So 5 in total. When you get to the bottom of the 5th rep, just kind of sway your hands from side to side. Sway your body as well, all you people who are just doing some weird orangutan looking thing. Just look like angry monkeys. And then just slowly come back to a standing position, and then have a little walk around if you need it. If you were to do those 3 exercises every morning, you will feel a lot better. Like, that is definitely something that everybody could do. There was a lot of queuing there. But, you know, if you were just to do that yourself, it would take like less than 5 minutes. And so the idea is like, especially if you've done a hard workout and usually the next day you feel a little bit sore or, you know, twisted or whatever it is. That's the idea here, right? And saying that, that is what I would call a warm-up. We're going to get a little bit more intense as well. And my recommendation for mobility training is there's 2 different approaches. So like if it's early morning as an example, or it's a day where you're full of energy, obviously that's going to be a different session than you've had a shitty day at work and someone's wrecked your head and you just want to move. So you as an adult can make those decisions. So the idea with that is, let's say what we just done there. My goal for everybody is to try and turn everything into strength training, or at least add resistance to a movement. So with that being said, like with the Jefferson curl, which is what we just did, you could add weight to that movement. With the shoulder circles, you could hold a really light dumbbell as an example. So there's always ways to make it more challenging, okay? My advice though is always like check how you're performing the exercise first, or at least the movement. It doesn't have to be an exercise. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is learn how to create tension in certain areas of the body. I find this very beneficial, so then when we start to go back into more movement stuff, you have an idea. Some people naturally create tension very easily, so if that is you, you might find this easy. If you are someone who is maybe very flexible and struggles to create tension, then this will be super beneficial, okay? All we're going to do is this. I have a bag over here with bands. The lighter the color, the lighter the band. One quick thing that I want to just mention is base positions, okay? A base position is currently what you're in, standing as an example. Sitting is also a base position. Cross-legged is a base position. Straddle position is a base position. There's 2 approaches. One is you find the one that you like. The other one is you find the one that you need to work on the most. The reason why I say that is because, again, consistency. If there's a position that you don't like and you don't spend time in it, guess what? You're always not going to like it. It's the same reason why most people opt for personal training, because they know that they're going to get made do stuff that they have to do that they won't do by themselves. So with that being said, you can get into whatever base position you would like. If you want to sit cross-legged, you can sit cross-legged. If you want to sit in a pike position, if you want to stand, you can stand. Make that decision. I'm going to go up here and I'm going to sit on my heels because that is the most comfortable position for me. All right, let me just break this down for you. We're going to be holding 4 different positions. This is for the shoulders. Is there someone hiding behind there? You can see me. You can see me there? All right, I'll do this. Just trying to hit everybody. It's the cheap theater tickets. That's what it is. Okay, so just watch carefully, right? What we're going to do here is we're going to do external rotation. We're going to do abduction. We're going to do overhead abduction, right? And then another one in between. The benefit of using the band is you have no choice but to create tension. That's the benefit of using bands, in my opinion, okay? Especially in a rehab context, or what I like to say prehab, because I don't like getting injured. I've done enough of it in the past, so I try to mitigate that. There is no way in hell we're going to create this bulletproof body that's not going to get injured, unfortunately. I hate to break it to you. But what we want to do is make sure that it's less, right? Rather than me blowing out my knee, maybe it's just tweaked a little bit. I'm back in action a week later. Right, just watch for a sec. I'm going to keep my elbows in by my side. It is external rotation. So I'm rotating. I'm not abducting. Okay, so elbow stays in by our side. Just watch for a sec. We go 30 seconds. Band stays under tension. After 30 seconds, we go to shoulder height and we abduct. Notice that I'm keeping the shoulders down. Purpose is trying to create as much tension as I can. Okay, 30 seconds. 30 seconds between the two. Notice the band stays under tension. Ribs stay down, up overhead, and then we abduct. There is going to be a lot of heat going into the shoulders. My advice is, if it's not painful, suck it up. Try to do it as long as you can. If you need to drop the band, you drop the band, but please make that the last decision that you do. And we're going to go 2 minutes in total. Everybody ready? Okay. Here, grab that. Here you go.
Thank you.
I'll punish myself.
Good.
Okay, is everybody ready? We're going 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's abduct first. Keep it under tension. Loads of tension in the arms here as well. So I'm squeezing the biceps. Could you take a step to the right if you don't mind? I just have a camera on me. Yeah, beautiful. It's all right. It's just, I don't want 2 minutes of your ass. It's probably best for both of us. Keep going. Keep it under tension. Let's try and keep the elbows in. 3, 2, we go up to shoulder height, and then we abduct. So when I'm in this position, I'm also pulling my shoulders down. I'm squeezing my biceps, keeping my abs nice and tight. So the purpose here is to create a level of tension that you are comfortable with, okay? It's also a good way to start to understand the discrepancies between left and right. You might notice one is working a lot better than the other side, okay? It's okay to give me dirty looks because I'm getting about 70% of them already. 3, 2, we're going between the two. So down, up, down, up. Keep it going. Try and keep it under tension. I'm seeing a lot of people letting that band relax. If anything, we kind of want the wrists to be in the same line as our shoulders, if possible. Trust me, I just have a good poker face. This sucks. We got 10 more seconds in this position. I also picked the strong band. So whoever else has the strong band knows what I'm going through. Sorry, I didn't pick the strong band. Mary made me use it. Let's go up overhead and let's abduct. Pull the ribs down, don't arch the back. If anything, I'm rotating my shoulders away from my ears. So more external rotation of my shoulder just to encourage more engagement from my lats. We got 15 seconds. Keep it going. Try to bring your arms like in the same line as your ears. So really try to bring them up. Try to lock them out. Last 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and lower down.
2 more rounds.
Yeah. Okay, shake it out. So, if you are somebody who doesn't know how to create tension, guess what? You definitely know how to create tension after doing that, right? And so the purpose of that is so that, for me as an individual, one of the most challenging things, because I only put more of an approach into flexibility training well into my 30s. So for me, it was all well and good going to somewhere where somebody would explain something, but unless I actually understood it or felt it, I found it really, really hard to decipher. So like, it's one thing for me to just explain something. Oh yeah, create more tension. If you're someone who doesn't do that naturally, that makes no sense. Yeah? So while as now, if you experience it, generally speaking, then it becomes a lot easier. All right? Okay, so next thing we're going to do, we'll just give the shoulders a little bit of a break. We're going to focus on our hips. I'm going to just move this way a little bit just so you can see me. Anybody got any pains in their knees or any sore knees? No? A little bit? Okay, just be mindful when you get in this position. I'll give a cue as to what to look out for. So I'm sitting on my butt. Just watch me for a second. I'm going to bring my heels in. I'm going to drop to one side, so I'm going into like a 90-90 position. I start with a closed angle on my knees, and then if it feels okay, the challenge would be to work more towards 90-90. Okay? Now, there's a few things like to set up here, or at least a few things that I want you to look out for. I'm trying to minimize the distance between the inside of my leg and the floor here. Okay? So what I'm actually doing is I'm kind of setting my right butt cheek, or whatever leg's in front, I'm setting that butt cheek onto the floor, and then I'm trying to push that away from me. So I'm pushing that away. What that's doing is it's just minimizing the gap here. Okay? Then I'm going to rotate my belly button towards the front. I'd like everybody to replicate this, okay? Or some variation of this. So I'll start like this, and then just allow both knees to fall to the side, whatever side you like, because I'll refer to the front leg as the front leg, as opposed to right and left. And then let's try and get 90 degrees if we can. And then I don't mind if your feet are pointed or flexed, but I would say a more natural position would be dorsiflexed. Replicate standing on your feet. Okay, So this is one of the best positions for self-assessment, and that's why I choose it. So if I'm training anybody online, this is usually where I put them, because it gives me a lot of answers, or at least I ask a question and then that gives me the answer. So we've got obviously our front leg, we have our back leg. Who's feeling it mostly in the back leg? Who's feeling it in the front leg? Okay, so you can see we've got different answers already, right? The purpose of this is very simple. The front leg is in an externally rotated position. The back leg is in an internally rotated position. I'll get everybody to swap over to the side. Now the question I want you to ask yourself is, are you feeling it in the same position as you did when you were on the other side? Or are you feeling it in a different position? There's going to be different answers, by the way. It's not a trick question. So who's feeling it mostly in the back leg? Who's feeling it mostly in the front leg? So you see we're getting different answers? So the benefit of the 90-90 position is this. It kind of highlights how symmetrical or how not symmetrical our hips are. But it also starts to trigger priorities. Because again, if we're an individual who's not spending a lot of time mobility, we want to try to work out what's specific to us as an individual. So very simply, the answer to this is the front leg is addressing external rotation, which I just mentioned. The back leg is addressing internal rotation. So in theory, if you're feeling in this side rather than this, then this is taking over the priority, right? So this is where there's more priority. If you are someone who had it on the same hip, so for example, this is my right leg, and now I'm feeling it here, and then I go over here, and I'm feeling it here, then definitely the priority is the right hip. So you see what I'm getting at? So it's a nice way for you as an individual to start to just look at things and go, all right. Because for me, the priority for most people in hips is rotation. You get really, really good at rotating a ball socket joint, it will perform very, very well. You can use your hands on the floor for the transition, by the way. You don't have to take it off the floor, yeah. Remember, we all have different hip structures here, so we just want to find what works for us as an individual. That's why you are here. It's a very selfish thing, and that's okay. You are here for you. In saying that, if we get to the end of the class and you feel like I haven't answered something specific for you, come on over, I'll be gentle. So start to notice there might be some little crampy sensations, that's okay. So this is like self-exploration, right? You are searching for areas of the body that you find challenging, so that, you know, the reason why I'm doing both, like your good morning as well as your rear leg lifts, because whichever you find more challenging might be the one that you take from today to do more often, okay? Beg your pardon? Yeah, if you've done two rounds. That's what I would call a closed 90-90. If that feels okay in your knees, then for sure. Otherwise, I would influence you to bring it out more, yeah. And then like bring the knee back, yeah, and then open the knee angle here. Yeah, keep opening. There, that would be better. Yeah, but use your hands, keep your hands on the floor. Keep your hands on the floor. Yeah. Yeah, that's usually the thing. If you think it's easy, you're probably doing it wrong. Or just ask the question for a different variation. So if you wanted to make this more challenging as an example, especially the rear leg, you could just put an ankle weight around your ankle. If you want to make the other one more challenging, you could put a plate on your back. So you could make the good morning a bit more challenging. Are you calling me? Yeah.
So lift things like that.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. So like, for example,
I'm not doing that.
you are, like what Mary highlighted at the start, if you've got good like hips that are flexible, then this is a nice way to continue that, but this is where then I would influence to start adding a bit of resistance.
Really nice.
Yeah, it's really good, yeah, because it'll just continue to kind of keep that nice and fresh. Exactly, yeah. So one of the biggest things here is for you as an individual, it's just asking yourself, how much flexibility do you need? Because sometimes I'll get a question of like, where should I be feeling it? And, you know, in specific circumstances, I would say to the individuals, like, do you have enough flexibility? Like, and that's what I mean by here is you might have a priority, like the front leg might feel nothing, back leg might be super intense. Maybe you have enough external rotation and that's why it's okay. Maybe you need to work on your internal rotation, and that could be different between left and right, okay? So just be honest with yourself. If it's someone who obviously wants to get into contortion and stuff like that, we're taking a totally different approach. But if we're just somebody who just wants to keep continuing to move and move well, this approach is like spot on, right? This is what works best. Okay, we'll just do another 20 seconds and then we're going to move on from this. This is all the easy stuff. It's like, you know, we're nearly past the first date. Now we're going to enter into the marriage. I'm going to be completely blunt and honest. So I have you sucked in now. The doors are locked. There's no windows.
I just feel like I missed the engagement.
You missed the engagement. That's it. Yeah. Sorry. I didn't swoon you. Sorry. Yeah. The fun part is when the door opens. Yes.
Client that's like really tight, is it better that they're just trying to go like, say they can't lift it, like should they go like this or they just go?
They can lean away from it, or what you might also do is lift their butt higher.
Okay.
So some people might be up on a step. I'll give you a quick caveat. So if anybody can't sit in a 1990, which is very prevalent with a lot of people who I work with, because most of the people I work with are like 40, 50, 60, 70, mainly the 50 to 70 range, and they haven't trained, we have to change the variation. So what I try to get across to most people is like, what's actually happening? I'm trying to rotate my hip. Okay, I can't do it in a 1990. How could I do it somewhere else? The exercise, in my opinion, is irrelevant. It's the intent behind what we're doing, okay? Because we can do the same, for example, the 1990, there's like so many different variations of approaches to that, as in like different ways of doing things, even sitting in the same position, even doing the same, what looks like the same exercise. For some of us, have to educate, you know, areas of the body and tissue within the body, how to kind of engage, how to not be nervous, because all we're trying to do here is override our apprehensive reflex, or at least get our nervous system kind of accustomed to what's happening. And so if you're like super tight and stuff like this, it's very hard to relax, right? So what I want to show you as we go through today as well is, for most people, we need to sit 90 seconds in a position to actually overcome our apprehensive reflex. It's not realistic for a lot of people. So that's why I try to work more on like dynamic stuff. If you have more time to invest in like stretching and stuff like that, and you do enjoy it, well, kind of 90 seconds to 2 minutes for a passive hold is what I would usually recommend. It's just for a lot of people. Well, the caveat is most people who need it most don't do it. So it's actually a nice way to de-stress as well. So most of us in this world are already overstressed. Okay, so what we'll push on to next, this one's going to be a little bit more challenging. And so what we'll do first of all, everybody's going to stand up. We're going to go into what I call a horse stance. The purpose of this is to create tension whilst having our adductors in a lengthened position, okay? For a lot of people, we might not necessarily have been in this position before. It's nearly like a sumo squat or a sumo deadlift stance. So the idea with this is if we're always accustomed to this position, and then life puts us in a situation where I have to lengthen my adductor, well, I might as well be good at it. So that's the purpose of this stuff, right? So like Cossack squats for some people are just a little bit too intense. There goes the hip again. So what I like to teach people is like, let's enter into that realm, and then if we want to make it more challenging, there's always options to do that. So a horse stance, just watch for a second. I'll just put this back on my back. So a horse stance is very simple. Probably don't wear these trousers for something like that. So all I'm doing here is I'm trying to crease or create a folding or compression in the hip here, all right? In terms of a hip position, we're doing the total opposite to a PPT. So we're actually trying to anteriorly tilt, like a little slow motion twerk, okay? Just watch for a second. If you're new to this, what I would usually recommend is feet together and we go 5 steps. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then try and set into that 5th step, and then sink down, twerk your butt out behind you. Biggest mistakes I see with most people is standing like this. This is very bad for your knees. So what I usually do is glute is going to try to like pull my knees out as far as I can. So my glutes are tense here. What we're going to do is this. We're going to hold for 60 seconds in this position. This is to address the difference between left and right, so you as an individual feel that. And then it's also to create tension, so getting good at creating tension. Then we're going to do another exercise, which I'm going to demonstrate on the floor. Then we're going to revisit this, and then you see if it improves. So the idea is I'm giving you techniques to make things better. If you are someone who wants to work on Cossacks as an example, it's the same movement. I'm more accustomed, or I'm more used to lengthening the inside legs. My go-to is this first. We can always walk out and go lower. It just puts it under more tension. Okay? Second exercise is this. I abduct the leg so my heel is in line with the knee. Okay? The good thing about these is they have lines. So what you could potentially do is go to the edge of the mat, put your heel on the mat, because your body is very clever even in an exercise you've never done before. It'll find the easiest way to do it. So what I like to do is stay stricter, because your body will try to do this so that you get out of the position. So if we can, bring it in here. If we had a yoga block or a roller as an example, you would put it here. Use that for a bit of tactile feedback, so that way you know if you do this, you kick it over. Now, just watch for a second. My Irish accent gets very annoying when it's on repeat. So what's going to happen is I'm probably going to say it about 15 times not to bend your arms, but we'll see if we can keep it lower than 15 for this one. So what you're going to happen is you're going to lock your arms out, take a big deep breath in, and then the challenge is to lift, drop back down. Okay? If that's easy being that it's more than 2 inches, this is all that I want you to lift. You go deeper into the position. Okay? Deeper in the position would look like this. I walk it away. I walk these closer. I take a big deep breath in, and then I lift, and then I come back down. We go for 10 repetitions and then a 10-second hold. Purpose there is it really isolates your glute, and without you even noticing, you are stretching your adductors because you are putting them in a lengthened position. And the biggest mistake that most people do is, if I was sitting in a passive hold like this, and all here is just stretching, if I'm someone who has an inefficient glute and I don't address that, well then, if I just staying in that position, I'm probably not going to progress, or I'm going to get to a certain point and I haven't addressed the root cause. So my approach for most things is, when we're stretching somewhere, check out how efficient you are at engaging the opposite side. So in this case, our butt. All right? Okay, 5 steps into a horse stance. We're going to hold this for 60 seconds. Let me rephrase that. You're going to hold this for 60 seconds. I think we're okay. Yeah, I think we're okay. Mary, get into that position. Okay, I'll start the clock in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's go. So don't let your knees roll in. Turn your feet out. There's a little bit of balance involved in this. So for some of us, you might find it a bit uneasy. And then just nice controlled. Remember, it's an anteriorly tilted position in our pelvis. So you are rolling your hips out behind. Are you okay?
I just don't want to, I can't load my foot.
That's okay. So can you hinge forward more?
I can. I'll just try and participate.
You can still hinge forward more, right? Yeah. Let's try and get to 90 degrees, guys. Can I put my hands on you? Mm-hmm. Yeah, just try and sit back a little bit if you can. Because you're really putting a lot of pressure there.
Are we clenching?
Yeah, squeeze your butt. Yeah. If you can't squeeze it, let me know. I guarantee if I poke it, it will squeeze. 3, 2, 1. Okay, stand up, kick the legs out. And then we're down onto the floor, okay? So we're going to load our wrists. If it's super intense on the wrists, you could do it on the elbows. It's more effective on the wrists. So if you do need to come down onto the elbows just because your wrists are aggravated, I'm okay with that. But where possible, do it on the wrists. Abduct the leg out to the side, whichever leg you want to start with. Heel should be in the same line as the knee. Big breath in, brace, and then try to lift your foot up. And then it's a parachute back down, and we go for 10 repetitions, and then we hold for 10 seconds on the 10th rep. If you are lifting it more than 2 inches, which is 99% of you, go into a deeper position. So if you're a bendy Wendy and your leg is nice and high, go into a deeper position. mainly because of this. If you are someone who is crazy flexible and you have a decent range of motion, but you cannot control it, you are at a higher risk of injury. So my advice is always try to get your active and your passive flexibility to within 10 degrees of each other, where possible. So if you're someone who can sit into a middle split as an example, but you are finding this challenging, this might give you a little bit of a light bulb moment in the sense that you could probably control this range of motion a little bit better. Think of a parachute, guys. So the leg comes down slow and controlled. Nobody wants a parachute that doesn't work. There's a few legs there that are hitting that ground at some serious pace. Remember to keep your arms nice and straight. A lot of bent arms here. And when you're holding for 10 seconds, which some of you forgot, don't forget Mississippi. It's always those last 3 seconds of counting. Spot the coaches in the corner. Yeah, so 10 reps, 10-second hold, then swap over to the side. Yeah. Did you do a 10-second hold? Yeah. Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
This is a really good exercise if you like to hip thrust a lot. Doing this before you do it, just kind of like wake things up a little bit. What'd you say? If you cannot lift the leg, then walk your hands further away from the straight leg. So you would walk kind of to be able to load the bent knee more. So you would walk your hands over that way. So if you can't lift the leg, walk back towards where the knee is, like the knee that's on the floor. Keep the arms nice and straight, just in case you didn't say it enough. The reason why you bend the arms is this. It's because you are a human being and you are trying to impress me with how high you can lift your leg. It just happens. But it's not about how high you lift the leg. It's about how deep you are in the position, okay? Getting a bit crampy butts, waking a few things up. But the good thing about this approach is if you are somebody who's used to, let's say F45 as an example, you're used to resistance training, you like that kind of feeling, it gives you a very similar kind of feeling, right? And again, I'm trying to give you exercises that you would be consistent at, as opposed to showing you exercises that I know, I mean, these work, but showing you other exercises and then you going, yeah, I'm not going to do that. So that's the purpose, right? And as I said, without you even noticing, you are lengthening your adductors here. So you are stretching in a way, your focus is different. And it's more active, quicker, and more likely to do. So we're going to go back into our horse stance now. So we all know what our butt is, or where it is. So we're going to hold this for 60 seconds, and then we're going to do another set of those. Okay, so see if you can go a little bit wider this time. See if you can turn your feet out a little bit more. Keep your knees pulled away from each other a bit more. We go in 3, 2, 1. Okay, let's go. The best way for you to actually do this would be like swivel around, put your legs up the wall, and then hold out in a straddle position. So it's that way it shouldn't load, like as in your bum right in against the wall and your feet up the wall. That way you can dictate how much you want to load. Yeah, and then you can even put your hands on your adductors if you wanted, or knees. Yeah. Another way to do that then is put kettlebells on your feet.
Of course. Russian coach.
No, that would be me standing on your adductors. Bridge, just pull your knees out a little bit. Yeah. So we want to try not to put too much force going down through the knees here. So if that is you, try to rotate a little bit better if possible. We got 15 more seconds. Stay in the position if we can. Breathe. It's useful. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, stand back up. We're back on the floor. See if you can go a little bit deeper this time. So abduct one leg. If anybody's finding it easy, let me know. We can always make it more challenging. I'm not saying that to be smart. There is people who might want more of a chance. So see if you can go a little bit deeper. See if you can walk that foot just away, just a slight bit more. I would rather you think of the floor as like a weighing scales and you're just trying to get light on the floor. So don't think of it as I have to lift the leg super high. You're just trying to remove it from the floor. So the deeper you go into this position, the more challenging that becomes. Walk your hands across as well if you are walking your feet away from you. Really good. Remember to keep the arms nice and straight. And then parachute back down. I don't want to see that leg just dropping because again, we're looking for control here. So if you are lifting the leg, see if you can kind of pause and then slowly kind of just lower back down. There's a few toe taps. Can we all hear that? That's the person who's not listening to me. I'm not going to single you out yet. Don't forget the hold. And don't forget Mississippi in between each count. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You'll also notice we didn't have to use much equipment, so your little excuses that you can't do it at home are kind of dormant, aren't they? Who didn't think it was going to be the way it has been? Oh. It is hard. It is hard. But that's the point. Like it's progressive overload, right? Like that's like any form of training. Like we either sit in maintenance mode or we have to like do certain things that are challenging. And my advice for most people is like when you approach an exercise, when it gets to that stage that it does feel like it's easy, then it's time to change it up. And that goes with mobility training. Sometimes it's not given the respect it deserves because we think it's like something that we can, you know, oh, we just do like a little bit here, a little bit there, but we don't put much thought behind it. Whereas you could be really specific and actually do less. And that's where I see people get better results, right? So that it's not just willy-nilly of like, oh yeah, I'll just do this, and then I'll just do this. It's like actually, because one of the biggest mistakes I see with a lot of people is not learning or at least not assessing like the certain discrepancies within their own body. And then you could be putting the time and effort in, but you're not doing the right stretches that would actually allow you to progress. And that's what I see a lot. Because I get a lot of people who say, like, I'm not flexible, I've been trying it for 5 years. And then I'm like, well, then you're doing it wrong. And I mean that in a nice way. But it's like, if I was doing strength training and I didn't get strong and I did it for 5 years, well, I'm doing it wrong, right? Like it's you know, if you get the right kind of way of progressing and you get the right structure behind it, it's actually quite easy, right? Easy in its approach doesn't mean it's easy in the exercise. Okay, so we've done a lot on the hips. We're going to do a little bit more because I'm going to show you, like mainly what we approached first of all was rotation in the hip. One of the biggest caveats though is if you are someone who sits a lot and you drive a lot and you sit and you watch TV a lot and you get really comfortable in a shortened position at like 90 degrees of your hips, you might have the perception that you have tight hips, but you also, they might be weak or weaker than they like, need to be. And so what I like to do is obviously assess that because for most people that I train and most people that I come across, we could all definitely improve our hip flexors. And I'm talking specific to your hip flexors because I've even noticed people who can squat a shitload of weight and then when we actually look at their hip flexors, they're not even using them. Like I say not even using them, your muscles don't switch off, but they're not using them as well as they could, right? And the reason why I want to show you that is because for a lot of people who assume they have tight hamstrings as an example, I'll come back here so you can see me because you look like you're in a daze. Hi. For a lot of people who like have the perception of tight hamstrings, a lot of the times it might be that your hip flexors are not doing what they need to do. And earlier I mentioned that when you are trying to stretch an area of the body or a particular joint, have a look at what's happening on the other side. So in the sense of me doing this, yes, my hamstrings are lengthening, but my hamstrings are going to be more relaxed if they're getting support from the other side, okay? And so what you'll see with a lot of people, if you're someone who's like this as an example, they mightn't even be engaging their hip flexors. So if I'm like this is like, so butt is tucked down as low as I can. The next point of call is for me to obviously engage and pull from my hip flexors. And you can see it. So this is me pulling from my hip flexors. Okay? So the way I would assess this is everybody's obviously sitting on the floor. If we all sit in an L position, i.e. just bring your legs out in front. If you can't sit upright, bend the knees. If you've got a big butt like me, you might just need to move your butt cheeks out of the way, and that might make it a little bit more comfortable. Okay, so if you can't keep your legs nice and straight, that's okay, but that would be also a good sign that maybe we need to work on this position, because again, the more comfortable we get in a lengthened position here, the better. So all I want you to do is this, right? If you're in a bent leg position, that's totally fine. Very similar to what we did when we had our leg abducted to the side. It is a leg lift position, but I'm not looking for how high you lift the leg. I'm looking for as much as you can compress, okay? So just watch for a sec. So in this position, what I'm looking to do is to draw the leg back in. So I'm pulling it in because, again, I'm trying to close this angle, okay? The more tension I can get deep in my hip capsule, the better. So I draw it in, and then I'm lifting, and then I'm relaxing. If that's easy, I go lower. I don't talk. And then I relax, okay? That was probably a little bit too fast, lowering back down. That's better. So the idea here is, if I'm someone who can't touch my toes, and I spend a lot of time getting good at this, what's going to happen? I'm going to find it really easy to compress. If I'm someone, especially from what I've seen, a lot of people spend a lot of time trying to stretch their hamstrings, and they haven't actually addressed maybe what's happening here or not happening here. And then they come to me and they say, I've been stretching my hamstrings for an extended period of time, it's not helping. And then all of a sudden I give them a protocol like that, where they're actually trying to just focus on using the strength to draw them in. And then lo and behold, they haven't thought about their hamstrings, okay? It's not to say stretching your hamstrings doesn't work. I'm just trying to show you what works very quickly for adults. So all I want you to do is this. I want you to try to walk your hands down towards your ankles, as long as you can remove the heel from the floor. It doesn't matter if your knee is a bit soft, but if you can, let's try and keep it straight. You're going to lift, drop back down, do 10 reps, then a 10-second hold, then swap over to the other side. You can do single legs or double legs. I see some people doing double legs. If you want more of a challenge, then you abduct your legs. So the further away your feet are, the more challenging it becomes. This is the one that might get a little bit crampy in the quads. Yeah? I usually give the cue of trying to pull back. If someone can't engage it, then in a specific sense, then I would have to try and investigate. One of the easiest ways is either with like a band, have it around something close to the floor, and then you would bring your knee up and actually try to engage there. Or if you were in a commercial gym and you had like a cable machine, you could attach it to your ankle, same thing. Or a kettlebell. You could stand like this with a kettlebell. If you stand here long enough, that's going to have the fire to keep it up. That's it. You punch them. Just if they're cramping, give them a good punch. But that's usually a good sign that your quad is trying to do the majority of the work, if it is getting crampy. If you're doing double leg, I'd put your hands on the inside. Yeah, it's more comfortable for like a setup. Yeah. Try and lock out the leg if we can, and then really draw that leg back into your hip. Just do one set on each side, so 10 reps, 10-second hold. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do our Jefferson curl, okay? So we did it in the warm-up. This time we're going to do it with some weights. The reason why I do this exercise beforehand is because when I do this, I've got to use my hip flexors to pull me down, so it's a good idea that I kind of have an idea of what I want to happen there, okay? And then what we're going to do, which is a way I approach things, is like an agonist and an antagonist approach, because if you just always do this, what's going to happen is this is going to get quite tight, because it gets really comfortable. You're already in a seated position, you drive to work, you sit in an office, all the things. So then we definitely want to be able to extend it. And we will do that afterwards, okay? That one's just more of a passive hold, which is why I kind of leave it towards the end. And then from what you're taking today is this, a lot more of the passive stuff you might do late at night, as an example. A lot more of the active stuff you might do in the morning or when you have loads of energy, because this can be quite, as you can tell, some people are out of breath. So this can be quite fatiguing. So sometimes if we do this just before we go to bed, it can actually have a counterproductive effect in the sense that it kind of makes you a bit wired. Okay, Jefferson curl is this one. What I would usually recommend is if you can touch your toes, then you would want to stand up on something. So we have the small platforms. They're good because they're nice and solid. If you don't feel comfortable, don't stand up on it. But the reason being is if I'm somebody, so like in my situation, if I was to hold a set of dumbbells, they would hit the floor before I go to my lowest position. So it's better that I try to get to my lowest position whilst I'm training it, okay? Slow and controlled wins the race on this one. If you're at the bottom position and you feel like, oh, that's too intense, drop the weights, finish the rep, because you are in a compromised position at the bottom. Don't just try and jump back out of it, okay? And when you come to the top, just set yourself for a second, because if you're going through this, some people can get a little bit of a head rush. All right, there's also steps here as well. So if you don't want to go as high as that step, there's these ones here, which work just as well. If you can't touch your toes, you're only mid-shin, I'm not talking about you. I would recommend that we use weights in the range of like 2 kilos. So with this exercise, this is the one that I said somebody did 4 times a week and went from not being able to touch their knees to putting their palms flat on the floor. So this is something that I advocate that people could literally do every single day without weight, with weight, whatever feels good for you. It's quite a global movement, which is why I really like it. Also, there's a lot of nerve endings in our lower back. So if you've had a stressful day, doing a couple of these can be beneficial. Tuck the chin, tuck the chin. Since coming to Australia, there's a few words I've changed. Tuck and bucket are staying with me. There is another one that rhymes with that, but I'm not going to say it. My advice for anybody who wants to teach mobility training is make it fun, whether that's with a few jokes here and there, because it can be quite monotonous. If I don't talk, nobody talks. See what I mean? But honestly, if you put the time and effort into this, it makes everything easier. I had back pain for 5 years, and I definitely put down to this sort of stuff to help me. Unfortunately, I was just one of those people who was bulletproof at 20, or thought he was bulletproof, played sports that wanted to smash my bodies, and now I'm paying for it. Slow and control wins the race. Yeah, so on this one, 5 reps, and then I would hold down the bottom either for like 3 breaths or 10 seconds. Just get comfortable with this position. It is a very global movement, and that's why I really encourage it. But we do want to try to tuck the chin. If you see somebody with a tightness in their lower back, you might notice a lot of apprehension. If that is somebody, they could potentially then go towards the wall and put their butt against the wall. Or as I mentioned, putting something in between the knees just reminds you to keep tension. And the challenge with this for a lot of people is resistance can be our friend in some mobility exercises, but then sometimes we want to try to do it without weight. Okay? So my approach with a lot of stuff is you as an individual decide how much range of motion do you need. Then the approach would be, how do we achieve that range of motion if we don't already have it? How do we control it if we do have it? And then how can we layer strength onto it? And then how can we layer speed onto it? Okay? Because speed is the one that minimizes the injury. If you are able to lengthen your tissue very fast and not be scared, then your chances of injury are less, because usually that's where a tear occurs. I don't know about you, but most of my injuries have been me doing dumb shit. It's never been falling in a perfect squat. It's never been. So what I try to do is get people prepared for that. My worst one was running for a bus, and then the phone fell out of my pocket, and I tried to turn to grab the phone, and then I twisted my knee. So it's like, it's usually the dumb shit, right? It's not. But thankfully, 5 days later, my knee was okay, and it's the knee that I've torn 3 times. So I was like, okay, that's all right. Or I know a few people who broke their ankles, like stepping off curbs, that kind of stuff. So it's like, you know who I'm talking about.
No, I dislocated my ankle
There you go. Oh, there you go. Well, I stepped off a curb that was deeper than I was expecting it to, and I had my daughter in my hands, and I actually felt my ankle bone hit the floor, and thankfully nothing happened. So I was like, I'm glad I do the dumb shit. It will pay dividends. I know some of it can be monotonous, but it's like, there's nothing worse than being injured. Trust me, I've had some weird and wonderful injuries. When you're sitting in a hospital bed and you're told it's 6 months recovery, that's when you start to realize, you know what, maybe this mobility stuff actually is worth doing. We're just reactive people, hey? Yeah, it's like, why are you doing mobility training? Because someone told me I had to do it. Exactly. Say again?
Can you show everyone?
Yeah.
Because everyone's going back into that deadlift. Not everyone, but.
So there's a few reasons why that happens. Everybody just relax the weight for a second. So one of the main reasons why you push your hips back is because you're trying to get out of the stretch. So like, if I do this and I push back, I'm actually getting out of the stretch position. If I lean forward more, I'm actually loading my hamstrings more. So some people, this is why I say is your body's very clever even in an exercise that you've never done before, because it'll decipher and find the easiest way to do it. Likewise, if someone has loads of tension, their back just doesn't want to segment. And that's where we would have to be a little bit more specific to that individual. So if you are someone who has a lot of tightness in your back, you probably notice that. You get to a certain point and then your back's like, no, like I'm not relaxing. So that's where again, this was trial and error, and for someone who had a chronic back pain for 5 years, this is what I used to do, is that putting a block in between my knees just allowed me to have more support. Putting my butt against the wall, now I knew there's less apprehension because my body feels supported. So then I knew that's like, okay. And then I would usually just kind of decipher just in that position. Like there was no point in me doing this because this is just my hamstrings, this was fine. It was just that initial point here where I had to let my abs just relax. So sometimes just even like focusing kind of like on a quarter rep where we have the problem, that's what I would recommend. This is mainly geared towards people who their spine is not doing what it needs to do. And then we might even need to just give you a bit more support, i.e. like lying on the floor and doing a different variation, okay? Okay, with that being said, pop the weights down for a sec. So what's really good and what's really important is that segmentation can happen in two directions. So obviously we're flexing there. We can extend as well. Extension is generally less than flexion. I'm guessing you have good extension in your spine from what I saw. So there's obviously exceptions to the rule. So what I want you to do here is we're going to focus more on just actually trying to get to our highest position. Think of like a cobra pose if anybody's done yoga. The way I would like you to do this is this is a good exercise to address what's our passive and what's our active position. So you can actively push up into your highest position, and then the challenge is to try to remove your hands and hold that position. If you don't understand all that, I'm pretty good at charades, so I'll give you a look. So what you're going to do is this. We come down. We know what a PPT is, so we're going to posteriorly tilt our pelvis, hold the credit card, mainly because I don't want you to arch from your lower back. Because watch, this might look like I have a flexible back. All I'm doing is hinging from my lower back. It's quite pinchy, so it's not really recommended. What I would prefer for most people sitting at a desk and whatnot, they get quite comfortable at rounding in the flex position. So we want to try and counteract that. So by coming into this position, this is as much extension as I have in my thoracic. Okay? From here, so I try to pull up as high as I can and then see, can I remove my hands? I hold for 5 and then I relax. It can be quite crampy on your back if you've not done this. If you want more of a challenge, then what you do is when you come up as high as you can, bring your hands up, pull your hands back. Bring your hands up, pull your hands back. So now I'm really trying to keep that extended position. Okay? When you pull your elbows back, you're really trying to like think of elbows going towards your butt, and you're really trying to light up your back muscles as best you can. With this one, every time you hold for 5 seconds, do it 5 times. So you should nearly feel your bottom ribs still on the floor. Even for some of us, you might need to just breathe out before you go through the rep. And then it's, if you want, you bring it up into like a Y position, or you just remove your hands from the floor. So, you know, if you want to bring your hands up overhead, that just adds more weight to the movement. That's the only difference. So much concentration. If anything, thumbs up towards the ceiling, it'll encourage more external rotation. Okay, next thing we're going to do, obviously finish the rep if you're not finished. Next thing we're going to focus on, or for the rest of the class we're going to focus on, is your shoulders. So what I would like you to do is, I would say for most people, grab a 2 kilo dumbbell. If you're feeling up to the challenge, maybe a 3 kilo, but be okay with dropping back to a 2 when you realize it was a bad decision. you only need 1. Say again? Anything that resembles a 2 kilo, yeah, it's fine. Yeah, yeah.
Guys,
You can grab a plate as well. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Just one each. You can even grab a 1 kilo if you, this is challenging, so if you want to grab a 1 kilo and then you feel like you want to make it more challenging, you can grab heavier. Energy levels okay? Don't hate me yet? No? Hated me from the moment you saw me? The good news is there's only about 13 minutes left. It's really hard for an Irishman to say that, so, you know, put in the effort. Yeah, that's the one thing I have changed. But I have a quick, what's the word I'm looking for? The reason why Irish people don't pronounce their H is because in the Irish language, the number 3 is tree. It's not 3. It's T-R-I with a little fodder. So we don't have a H in it. So that's why people, yeah, there you go. So technically, we're actually saying the right number.
You got an H.
Say again?
You got an H.
Not in the Irish language. It's just T-R-I fodder. That's how you say tree.
What about like all those whiskies and stuff? Whiskey. With like,
Straight, it's either potatoes or whiskey. Like,
yeah, like those O'Loughlin's and shit. Or am I in a different country?
I'm talking about the number 3.
Yeah, but you got H in the language.
Yeah, well, I'm just talking about that specific number that you all get attracted to. Don't listen to the Italian in the corner.
Hey. We don't have H. Yes, we do. We've got H's. We just don't have J's or W's. What about?
All right. Let's talk about shoulders for the next 12 minutes now. All right. So what I want to show you is a great exercise for bringing as much to the table, even in one exercise. So the way we're going to do this is called a Powell raise. Okay. So it's going to work stability in the bottom shoulder. And then it's going to work scapular control in the upper or the top shoulder, okay? Again, more bang for our buck. So if I'm doing an exercise, guess what? It's also really good for your obliques. It can be quite challenging. So I'll give you different variations depending on where you're at as an individual. The reason why I said go light is because those dumbbells can get heavy pretty quickly. The way we would do this, so think of like a side plank. The difference here is I'm going to keep the bottom knee bent. I'm going to load my ankle, knee, hip, elbow all in the same line. Then I'm going to place the dumbbell in front of my nipple line. Okay? So now this is where the stability of the bottom shoulder comes in. Notice my hip came off the floor. If you are someone who needs to keep the hip on the floor, you keep the hip on the floor. That might be a sign that the stability is not where it needs to be. So you can also kind of like play around with it. Maybe for 2 reps, you can keep it up. Maybe you have to drop it when you drop it. You are an adult, make an executive decision. And then from here, there's a few little things I want you to think about. We retract when we lift, we protract when we descend. For anybody who doesn't know that, this is retract, this is protract, okay? At no point did I elevate. Because the main reason is I want you to learn how to use your lats, and the best way to do that is when we depress our shoulders, okay? Because sometimes what we see is this. So we want to still pull it down. The more I can engage here, the better, right? So I come up, I'm in my nipple line, I retract, I come up, And then now I keep my body in the same position so I don't rotate, but I'm trying to push my hand as far forward as I can without elevating my shoulder. So I retract, I lift, and then I'm pushing as far away as I can. So my back is quite rounded at the bottom. The reason why this is really, really good is because for a lot of people, we're always thought just back and down, and we get really strong in that position. But our scaps actually should be able to glide up and down on our rib cage. The only difference is we want to be doing that with control. So it's like, if you think of someone you see hanging, and they're like this, and they're hanging on for dear life, they mightn't actually be controlled in that position, while as you might see someone else who can control their lats and actually descend into that same visual position, but they have more control. That's all I'm trying to teach you, how to control your body. Okay? Let's set ourselves up. You're going to go for 10 repetitions and then swap over to the opposite side. Yeah. So just think of like a side plank. The difference is we're bending the bottom knee. And then from here, if I can, I come up so hip comes off the floor. Then I reach out and I grab my dumbbell. I retract, I lift, and then I parachute back down slow and controlled as I push away. I retract, I lift, I parachute down slow and controlled. Please be okay with standing back up and grabbing a lighter dumbbell if you need it. I don't need any heroes here. Try not to rotate the body. So ideally from your elbow to your ankle is like a nice straight line, and your knee is also on that line. We are constantly pushing the elbow through the floor, so you're really stabilizing that bottom shoulder. And if you can, take the hips off the floor, even if it's only for 1 or 2 reps. You can always drop it back down if you need to. If you were doing this at home as an example, like you could definitely find something that's like a kilo of weight, even lighter if you're finding it challenging. So again, my purpose today was to try to give you as many exercises that don't really involve a lot of weight. It's amazing how tired that bottom shoulder gets, huh? And then we go the opposite side. Don't forget to retract, because we are searching for tension through this movement. We're not just carrying out the movement. So we are searching for control here. So really try and retract the shoulder as best you can. Think of your nipple line, so you want to lift on that same line and then just descend on that same line so it doesn't decipher from there. And if we can I put my hands on it? Just want you to keep that shoulder down, so especially when you lift. So try to lift it in between my arms. Yeah, keep coming, keep coming, keep coming, keep coming. So see the way you're going to touch me? So you want to stay away from my arms, yeah, and keep lifting. Keep lifting, keep lifting, keep lifting, keep lifting. Now parachute back down. Yeah, so you really want to try and keep that pattern if you can. It's just to show control. It doesn't matter if you pick that pattern as an example. But whatever one you pick, you want to try and make sure that you're doing it on purpose, right? As opposed to your body deviating from a certain position without your knowledge or without your control, right? And if anything, I would suck your stomach in, keep a bit more tension. Yeah, beautiful. If you can bring the knee back a little bit. Yeah. Because you want to be in a nice, so from your ankle, knee, hip, shoulder, ideally a nice straight line. So extend your hip a bit, push your butt forward. Yes, beautiful. So 10 repetitions on both sides. It's harder than it looks, hey? But again, it just brings a lot into play here, right? Like the exercise that I'm going to give you next now as well can be paired with this exercise. So again, you're getting to see how quickly we can do things, so that if it was something like, for example, if you were in a very lower body dominant class, and then maybe you have 5 minutes afterwards to spend, well, maybe you go through a set of 2 sets of this as an example. That's usually how I pair things. If I'm doing a very dominant lower body class, then I'll usually do mobility for the upper body. Likewise, if I'm doing a heavy upper body session, then I'll generally do some lower body mobility, okay? Or I just do a whole session. But generally speaking, if time's not of the essence, then that's how I would approach that. Okay, Next thing, we're now working on some external rotation, but mainly rotation of the shoulder, so there will be internal also. You're just going to get into your best photo shoot position. This is mine. And then from here, I'm going to keep my elbow in against my side, okay? Now what I do first of all, before I grab any weight, is I assess to see how much external rotation I have. The challenge is to try and get my knuckles facing up towards the ceiling. We're not flicking our wrists back like this. So I'm trying to just basically keep this nice line as I come all the way up, okay? So I know there's 90 degrees. The reason why I do this is because if I grab a weight and then I can only go to here, then potentially the weight is too heavy. So me as an adult can go, well, I think you grabbed the wrong weight. So we always want to be like just about getting there with the weight that we've chosen. Likewise, if we start to fatigue, then we just drop a weight. So this is one of those ones that I usually do with a drop set. So I might have a lighter dumbbell at my disposal so that I can continue to do the reps. We're going to go for 10, so it's going to be all the way up, slowly back down. And the reason why I like to do this as opposed to, let's say this, is the strength curve is better, right? So when I'm pulling against gravity when I go into a sideline position, it'll give me more bang for my buck. All right? So keep the elbow pinned into the side. Really try to like pull up as high as you can and then descend back down. We go for 10 and then swap over to the side. Say again? Best photo shoot position, so whatever feels comfortable for you. Don't act as if you've never been painted like a French girl. We've all seen Titanic, come on. The reason why I say these things is because then people remember them. So if you say something that sounds quite silly, people are more likely to remember, right? So next time you do this, you're like, oh yeah, photo position, yeah. As opposed to, what did that crazy Irishman say again? I can't remember. The other good news is I've filmed most of this as well, so you'll all get access to that. So if you don't like the jokes, just watch it on mute. I want to stretch your hip flexors before we go. Everyone's like, that's totally fine, it's okay. It's like, oh, the 12 o'clock, yeah, I gotta go. Usually my workshops are 4 hours because I talk a lot and there's an awful lot to get through. So this is a very condensed version, so hopefully you still got an awful lot of information. Hopefully. Would you like to be my beautiful demo, seeing as you're right here?
I'd love to. Said no one ever.
Okay, just listen up for a sec. There is a bit of setup for this. So with the mat, we're mainly focusing on this area of the knee, so not the kneecap itself. So more like your VMO, right? I say that because when you set up the mat, I want you to try to make contact there rather than there because that's very prominent, especially on a hard floor. Okay? So what I would do is this. I would roll it up a little bit. I'll show you first, and so I'm not going to make you just go into something you don't know. So you just stand aside for a sec. All right, so what I will do is this. Bring this to the side a little bit so that I can bring my foot beside it. Now, as I said, we're loading the meaty part of our leg, not the kneecap. So I'm placing that onto the mat, okay? That way it'll be a bit nicer on the hard floor. Then all I'm going to do is sit upright like this. Try to tuck our butt. We all know what a posterior tilt is. So I am more impressed by you being up higher but locking in your pelvis, so having tension in your glute, than sitting here like this where I'm just arching from my lower back. Because we're trying to get into hip flexors. It's not about how low you're in the position. It's more effective with the stretch, okay? Do you want to replicate that? Sure. Can I put my hands on your hips? Okay, so what I'm looking for here is, and relax. What I'm looking for here is there any kind of like twisting of the hips or anything like that? So me as an individual can see if there is or is not. For most people, they'll probably leave, just relax your feet, like point them, yeah. For most people, they might just stay in this position. We're looking for 70 to 80%, okay, in terms of intensity. So if you're sitting there wondering what you're having for lunch, you could probably go a little bit deeper into the stretch, right? You were sitting there thinking, having lunch, weren't you? As a partner, can I put my hands on your hips? Yeah. All I'm going to do is just apply a little bit of pressure, okay? Is that your back that cracked?
No, my neck.
Oh. And then all I'm gonna do, this is it. It's their body, it's not my body. If they want more, they say, a little bit more pressure. If they say, get your hands off me, you know what to do, right? Now, if they do want more pressure, so she definitely wants more because she's laughing there. Relax, relax. So all I'm going to do is this. My forearm is just going to stop her from sitting back, all right? All I want you to do, first of all, is just reach back and pull your heel up towards your butt, like with your hand. So just reach your right hand back. Yeah? Okay, cool. And then relax. Relax, 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 let go, relax. So the reason why I did that is because now I know how high she can lift it, right? So if she tells me to stop, I know she's lying. So she lifted it, I could see where it went, right? Sorry about that. So now all I'm going to do is this. Relax your foot, relax, relax, relax. She'll tell me when to stop, relax. I don't know why I say relax. I've never had a woman relax when I've told her to relax. It's never worked. Never ever in the history has it ever worked. Right, so now what I'm going to do is, I'm doing this so it frees up this hand. Yeah, it's also because for some people their foot is going to be stronger than my hand. So at least here I'm giving her a bit of a restriction. Now what I'm feeling for here, is there any kind of apprehension? There's not really, so I know she can go a little bit deeper regardless of what she's saying, because I can feel there's not a lot of tension. So what I would do is this. Soften your stomach. So you see I'm creeping up more, right? And then I just hold. We're going to hold this for 60 seconds. I know there was a bit of cueing there, but I want you to do it right. It is also very important that I am in a comfortable position, because if I'm like this, that's not going to be comfortable for her. If I'm shaking, right? It's annoying, isn't it? Yeah, okay? So it's just as important that you are in a fairly comfortable position here also. You're just going to hold them there for 60 seconds, swap over to the other side, and then swap over as partners. That's all right, I'll be vocal. Okay, decide who's going first. Come down into that lunge position. Front leg should be more than 90 degrees. Your front leg should be more than 90 degrees. Front leg should be more than 90 degrees. Front leg should be more than 90 degrees. Yes, because if you go into a deep position, you don't want that knee to be restricting you. So the more you open that angle, the better. That's all right. That's okay. See you later. So if they want to raise the foot, they raise the foot. If they don't want to raise the foot, you raise it for them. If they're happy, honestly though, if they're happy with where they're at, they can stay there. What would be good for you is to do it with your foot up the wall if you want more response.
Yeah, so I have a very visceral reaction to that because
Okay.
that's how I dislocated my knee.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to do
That's-
my own one.
That is totally fine.
Yeah.
Totally fine. That's okay. Now, if we can, try to be in an upright position, because just think of what's happening. You're trying to stretch your hip flexor. In saying that, if you feel you're just arching from your lower back, then I would lean forward a bit, okay? If you feel like you're just pinching your lower back, then I would lean forward a little bit. Just got 20 more seconds. Yeah, but bring one foot forward. Bring one foot forward.
No, we just reached.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. You got last 10.
Breathe. Deep breath. Deep breath.
Okay, slowly lower the foot back down, then take the pressure off. Then we'll swap over to the other side.
I'm sure it's very good for you. Just like here or here as well.
It depends. So the reason why I say that is when we do any kind of anterior stretching, if we feel any anterior stretching, what'll happen is it'll hit wherever's your tightest position. So for some people, it mightn't be in the hip flexor yet because the quad might be so tight. So that's why I like this position, because it addresses that. And then you can tell very quickly if I would need to change for somebody.
Like a very long.
Yeah, that seems pretty okay for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can do it?
Yes. Oh, the other side.
So if you are feeling this in the quad and not in the hip flexor, it might be that your quads are so tight it doesn't have the opportunity to go up into the hip flexor. What I would recommend is that you deal with it as a priority. So if your quad is super tight, maybe that is the priority for now. Yeah, we have discrepancies, unfortunately. Yeah. This area right here. If you can, try and soften your belly as best you can. So every time you breathe out, find your happy place. It's probably not here, but sure, look. You can always imagine. Why are people coming out of the stretch? Hi? What's happening? We got 10 more seconds. Oh, yeah, mate. Yeah, I've got you. I've got you. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Swap over. She's like, I'm out. I'm out. Yeah, tap. I'm out. Okay, swap over. You can definitely lift his back foot up. He's sitting there smiling and everything. Yeah. He's going to change very quickly though. Don't hold your breath. Don't hold your breath. So best thing you can do here is every time you breathe out, try soften your belly, okay? Every time you breathe out, just try and relax your stomach. I'm not going to take any photos. You can relax your abs. You tapping out? You did go in early. I'll give you that. I'll give you that. 20 more seconds on this side.
Yeah.
5, 4, 3, 2, slowly lower down the leg, and then we'll swap over to the opposite side.
Your toes like off.
So we always want to be on that tipping point of comfort, okay? Tipping point of comfort here. So it should be challenging, but you know, it should be at a position that you can focus on your breath. If you go too deep too soon, you are going to freak out your nervous system. It's very hard to relax. And that's one of the biggest problems that most people make when they try to stretch. You try to go too deep too soon, and then you freak out your nervous system. So always just try and find the tipping point of comfort first. Be okay with that, regardless of where it is, and then just focus on your breath, okay? You got 15 more seconds here.
It's just this side is so different to the other side.
It's because you're so jacked, Mary.
Oh, right.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, slowly come down.